Hey guys, sit with me for a moment. Not to be entertained, not to be distracted, but to breathe. Because if you are honest, truly honest, you already feel it. A low hum beneath your days, a tension you cannot switch off, a worry that does not announce itself loudly, yet never leaves. You wake up and reach for your phone before your feet touch the floor. There's news, alerts, crises, arguments, disasters, predictions. Before your mind has even formed a thought of its own, it has already been invaded, and you tell yourself, this is normal now, but deep down, something resists because human beings were not built to absorb the suffering of the entire world before breakfast. You are not broken. You are overwhelmed. We live in an age that calls itself advanced, yet it has quietly stripped us of something essential: inner ground. We know how to scroll. We know how to react. We know how to panic collectively, but we do not know how to stand still when the world shakes. This is why anxiety has become the background noise of modern life. Not dramatic panic, not visible collapse, just constant unease. A sense that something terrible might happen at any moment, and that somehow it will be your fault for not predicting it. 2,000 years ago, people lived under plague, exile, slavery, infant mortality, war, political terror, and sudden death. And yet, some of them were calm. Not because life was kinder, but because their minds were trained differently. They were Stoics, not the internet version, not emotional repression, not be hard. Stoicism was never about becoming numb. It was about becoming unshakable. The Stoics looked at life without illusion. They did not promise safety. They did not offer optimism as comfort. They offered clarity. They said life is unstable. Change is guaranteed. Loss is unavoidable. Death is certain. And strangely, this did not make them despair. It freed them because most of our suffering does not come from events themselves. It comes from our resistance to reality. We spend enormous energy arguing with what already is. Why did this happen? Why me? Why now? Why can't life be fair? But the universe does not respond to complaints. It responds only to how we live. The Stoics began with a radical truth. You do not control most of what happens to you. This is not pessimism. It is the beginning of peace. Because the moment you stop demanding control over the uncontrollable, your mind relaxes. Epictetus, born enslaved, physically disabled, and later freed, taught something terrifying and liberating. Some things are up to you. Some things are not. Your body may fail. Your reputation may suffer. Your loved ones may leave. Your plans may collapse. These are not yours to command, but your judgments, your responses, your character. These remain yours until your final breath. Most people never learn this distinction. They pour their energy outward, trying to manage outcomes, trying to predict chaos, trying to bend people into behaving differently, and when life resists, as it always does, they call it anxiety. But this anxiety is not wisdom. Anxiety is misplaced responsibility. You feel anxious because you believe you are responsible for outcomes you cannot control. The Stoic removes that burden, not by apathy, but by precision. Is this within my power? If yes, act with courage. If no, release it. This single question can save years of unnecessary suffering. Modern life trains you to feel responsible for everything. The world's problems, other people's emotions, the future's uncertainties. No wonder you feel exhausted. The Stoic path is quieter. It does not ask you to save the world. It asks you to govern yourself, and that is already heroic enough. One of the most confronting teachings of Stoicism is this: everything you love is on loan. Your health, your career, your partner, your children, your parents, your reputation, your body. None of it belongs to you permanently. We treat loss as betrayal, but the Stoics treated it as part of the contract. When something arrives in your life, they said, greet it with gratitude, but do not cling. Not because love is wrong, but because attachment that denies impermanence becomes suffering. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself again and again, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not to frighten himself, but to wake himself. We live as if time is unlimited. We postpone honesty, we delay courage. We wait for confidence to appear, but confidence does not, and action does. Seneca observed that people guard their money carefully but waste time without noticing. Time, your real wealth, leaks away quietly. You can lose money and recover, but you lose time and never reclaim it. This is why Stoicism insists on mortality awareness. Not morbid obsession, but sober remembrance. Remember you will die. Not tomorrow, not soon. Eventually. And because of that, this moment matters, not in a dramatic sense, in a precise one. How you speak today, how you treat others, how you use your attention, how you respond to difficulty. These are the building blocks of your life. Not your goals, not your plans, not your future fantasies. Your character is being shaped quietly every day. The Stoics did not ask, will this make me happy? They asked, will this make me good? Because happiness fluctuates, but virtue stabilizes. To be good, in Stoic terms, did not mean morally perfect, but it meant aligned with nature, reasonable, fair, courageous, temperate, to act according to what is within your control, to accept what is not, to contribute where you can, to let go where you must. This is how calm is built, not as a feeling, as a practice. Ataraxia, the Stoic word for tranquility, does not mean joy or excitement, but it means undisturbed. The world can burn, but your inner house remains orderly. Not because you don't care, but because panic does not help suffering. Clarity does. You begin to see life not as something that should obey you, but as something to participate in wisely. And here is the great paradox: when you stop trying to control life, life becomes easier to live. When you accept uncertainty, fear loosens its grip. When you face mortality, you begin to live fully. This philosophy was born in chaos because chaos is where it is needed most. Not in calm seasons, but in unstable ones. And ours is an unstable age. Which means this wisdom is not outdated, it is urgent. This is only the beginning. If anxiety were a sound, it would not be a scream. It would be a hum. A constant background vibration you barely notice anymore until the moment silence appears and feels unbearable. This is the condition of the modern mind, not overwhelmed by one catastrophe, but by too much of everything, all the time. The Stoics never faced push notifications. They never scrolled disasters at midnight. They never absorbed 1,000 opinions before breakfast. Yet they understood something we are only beginning to realize. The mind cannot remain calm if it is constantly stimulated. Your nervous system was not designed for perpetual alertness. In ancient times, danger arrived rarely but intensely: a war, a famine, a disease. Now danger arrives symbolically, endlessly, and without resolution. A headline suggests catastrophe. Another contradicts it. Another inflames outrage. Another demands urgency. Your body reacts as if a lion is nearby, but there is no lion. Only information, and information without action becomes anxiety. This is why so many people feel tired even when nothing has happened. The Stoics would say your mind has been dragged outside itself. Epictetus warned his students not to hand their peace to others. Yet today, we hand it over willingly, to algorithms, to strangers' opinions, to endless comparisons. You measure your life against edited highlights. You compare your behind the scenes to someone else's performance, and slowly, quietly, dissatisfaction grows. Stoicism does not deny desire. It simply asks desire what is worthy. Most of what fuels modern worry is misplaced desire. Desire for approval, desire for certainty, desire for control over how others see you, but reputation. The Stoics said, lives in other people's minds, and you do not control those minds. So, why do you live as if you do? Seneca warned that nothing is more exhausting than trying to appear impressive because appearance requires constant maintenance. One wrong moment, one misunderstanding, one rumor, and the image collapses. The Stoic chooses a quieter ambition to be good rather than to be admired, to act rightly even when unseen, to measure success internally. This is deeply unfashionable. Modern culture trains you to be visible. Stoicism trains you to be solid. There is a difference. Visibility depends on others, and solidity depends on you. The Stoics were suspicious of excess, not because pleasure was evil, but because dependency is dangerous. Anything you cannot lose without distress owns you. This includes comfort, status, praise, certainty. If your peace depends on external stability, you will never have peace because life is not stable. This is not cynicism, it is realism. And realism is kinder than false hope. The Stoic does not say, everything will be okay. He says, I will be okay, regardless. That difference is everything. One depends on the world behaving, the other depends on character. This is why Stoicism survived plagues and empires. It does not collapse when circumstances change. It adapts. Modern anxiety often comes from one quiet belief: I should be able to handle everything, but you were never meant to. The Stoics rejected the fantasy of total self-sufficiency. They believed humans are social creatures, parts of a greater whole. You belong to humanity, to nature, to time. You are not an isolated project that must be perfected. You are a participant. This perspective reduces pressure. You stop seeing every failure as personal catastrophe. You stop interpreting difficulty as injustice. You begin to see life as a shared condition. Everyone struggles. Everyone loses. Everyone dies. Not as tragedy, but as common ground. This understanding breeds compassion for others and for yourself. The Stoics were not harsh with human weakness. They were realistic about it. They knew we would fail. They simply asked us to try again without self-pity. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders not to be angry with people who act badly. Why? Because they act from ignorance, and ignorance is part of being human. This does not excuse harm, but it prevents bitterness. Anger feels powerful, but it corrodes the container that holds it. You suffer twice, once from the event, and once from your reaction. The Stoic reduces suffering by shortening the second wound. He asks, is my reaction improving the situation or merely poisoning me? Most worry does not improve outcomes. It only exhausts the mind. The Stoics made a radical claim. Worry is optional, not because bad things won't happen, but because suffering in advance achieves nothing. They practiced premeditatio malorum, negative visualization, but not as rumination. They imagined loss briefly, then returned to gratitude, a flash, not a spiral. The purpose was not fear, it was appreciation. When you remember that what you have can disappear, you cherish it more fully. You speak more honestly. You listen more closely. You postpone less. Paradoxically, contemplating loss deepens love because love without awareness of impermanence becomes entitlement, and entitlement always ends in disappointment. Stoicism replaces entitlement with gratitude, not forced positivity. Clear-eyed appreciation. I have this for now. That single phrase softens fear. The Stoics did not promise happiness. They promised equanimity, a steadiness that allows joy when it comes, sorrow when it must, and dignity throughout. Modern culture chases constant happiness and creates constant dissatisfaction. Stoicism aims lower and achieves more. A calm mind, a clean conscience, a life lived deliberately. This is enough. More than enough. The anxious mind is always elsewhere. The Stoic mind returns home, to the present moment, because the present moment is the only place where life occurs. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Now. You cannot act yesterday. You cannot live tomorrow. You can only practice virtue now, and this is liberating. You stop carrying the entire future on your shoulders. You carry only the next right action. That is light enough. This is how worry loosens its grip. Not through denial, through discipline, not through optimism, through alignment with reality. And when you align with reality, you stop fighting shadows. You conserve energy. You become calm not because the world improves, but because you do. There is a misunderstanding that shadows Stoicism. People imagine calm as withdrawal, peace as indifference, tranquility as emotional distance. The Stoics meant none of this. They did not retreat from life. They entered it with discipline. Stoic calm is not the calm of someone who does not care. It is the calm of someone who knows where to place care wisely. Most suffering comes not from caring too much, but from caring about the wrong things. The Stoic does not care less. He cares precisely. He does not invest his soul in outcomes he cannot govern. He invests it in conduct. This is the heart of Stoic ethics. Not moral perfection, not righteousness, but responsibility for one's own character. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he wrote to himself reminders like a student. Do not waste time arguing about what a good person is. Be one. This was not arrogance. It was urgency, because the Stoics believed life was too short for theory without practice. They did not ask, what should people do? They asked, what should I do right now? The modern mind is excellent at abstraction. We discuss justice endlessly while neglecting kindness in daily interactions. We argue about virtue online while snapping at loved ones offline. Stoicism brings philosophy back down to earth. How you speak, how you listen, how you respond when tired, how you treat those with no power over you. This is where character lives, not in opinions but in actions. The Stoics believed that virtue was the only true good. Why? Because everything else can be taken away. Health can fail. Wealth can vanish. Status can reverse, but no one can steal your integrity unless you surrender it. This is not moral superiority. It is stability. If your self-worth depends on things you cannot control, your identity will be fragile. If it depends on your choices, it becomes resilient. This is why Stoicism produces quiet strength, not dominance, not aggression. Strength of restraint, strength of clarity, strength of saying no when impulse screams yes. The Stoics were not enemies of emotion. They were enemies of being ruled by emotion. They distinguished between feelings that arise naturally and judgments that follow. Anger, grief, fear. These appear automatically, but whether they dominate your actions, that is a choice. Epictetus compared the mind to a gatekeeper. Impressions arrive uninvited. Your job is to decide which ones you admit. You cannot stop a thought from appearing. You can stop it from becoming belief. This practice takes time, patience, self-observation. The Stoic watches himself without hatred. He studies his reactions like a scientist studies weather, not with shame, but with curiosity. Why did that disturb me? This question alone dissolves much suffering because it shifts you from victim to student. Instead of saying, "Life did this to me," you ask, "What belief did this touch?" And often the belief is exposed as fragile. I must be liked. I must succeed. I must not fail. I must not lose. These are not truths. They are expectations disguised as necessities. The Stoic gently removes them, not violently, not all at once. One judgment at a time and slowly. Freedom returns. Modern culture teaches instant emotional expression. Say everything, share everything, react immediately. Stoicism teaches pause, not suppression, delay. Between stimulus and response lies your freedom. Most people live without that space. They react, then regret, react, then explain, react, then apologize. The Stoic widens the space. A breath, a moment, a question. Is this worth my disturbance? Often, the answer is no. This does not make life passive. It makes it intentional. The Stoics believed humans were made for cooperation, not competition, not isolation. You are part of a larger body, humanity itself. When you act selfishly, you harm the whole. When you act virtuously, you strengthen it. This idea grounds ethics without needing reward or punishment. You act well not because you will be praised, but because it aligns you with nature. To live against your nature is exhausting. To live according to it feels right. Stoic goodness is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It simply acts. Modern life is obsessed with being seen, but Stoicism is concerned with being sound. There is a difference. You can be admired and hollow. You can be unknown and whole. The Stoics chose wholeness. They understood that peace comes from coherence. When your actions match your values, when your words match your behavior, when your inner life and outer life agree. Inner conflict is far more painful than external difficulty. To lie to yourself is the deepest anxiety. To live truthfully is relief. This is why Stoicism feels like exhaling. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop fighting yourself. The Stoic does not expect the world to be fair. He expects to be fair. He does not expect life to be gentle. He expects himself to be just. This is where dignity lives, even in grief, even in loss, even in failure. when everything external collapses. Character remains, and character gives meaning when circumstances cannot. This is why Stoicism does not fear suffering. It respects it. Suffering is not sought, but when it arrives, it is used as training, as instruction, as refinement. Fire does not destroy gold. It reveals it. The Stoics believed adversity shows who you are. Not to shame you, but to teach you, and if you fail, you begin again. Without drama, without self-hatred. Just practice every day. This is the Stoic life. Not heroic in appearance, but profound in effect, and when lived long enough, something remarkable happens. You begin to trust yourself, not because you believe nothing bad will happen, but because you know you can meet whatever does. That is true confidence, quiet, stable, earned. There comes a moment in every life when philosophy stops being interesting and becomes necessary. It is not during success, not during comfort, not when things are going well. It is when something is taken, a person, a future, a version of yourself you thought would last. Grief does not announce itself politely. It crashes. It empties the room of meaning, and in that moment, every abstract idea is tested. The Stoics did not pretend grief could be avoided. They never asked you to feel nothing. They asked something harder. Feel fully, but do not be destroyed. Modern culture gives us two extremes. Either suppress grief and stay strong, or drown in it until identity collapses. Stoicism offers a third path: to grieve without losing yourself. Seneca wrote consolations to friends who had lost children, siblings, and loved ones. He did not deny pain. He did not shame tears, but he acknowledged that loss wounds deeply, and he reminded them of something crucial. What hurts is not only that the person is gone. What hurts is that we believe they would always remain. Grief is the collision between love and impermanence. The Stoics taught that everything mortal must be loved mortally, not casually but honestly. To love knowing loss will come. This does not weaken love. It purifies it, because love without awareness of loss becomes possession, and possession turns grief into revolt against reality. The Stoic does not say, "This should not have happened." He says, "This was always possible." This does not remove pain, but it removes shock, and shock multiplies suffering. The Stoics practiced negative visualization not to darken life, but to deepen gratitude while it is here. Remember this conversation, this embrace. This ordinary moment is temporary, which makes it precious. We often say, "I didn't know it would be the last time," but the Stoics lived as if every time might be, not with anxiety, with attentiveness. They believed that by gently contemplating loss ahead of time, grief would arrive as sorrow, not devastation. You still cry, you still ache, but you do not collapse into disbelief. You do not rage at the universe for keeping its contract, because death was never a betrayal. It was always part of the terms. This is difficult wisdom, and it cannot be absorbed intellectually. It must be practiced slowly, with humility, with care. Even Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, disciplined mind, lost 9 of his children. Stoicism did not spare him suffering, it helped him endure it. He wrote to himself, "Do not feel as if you have been robbed, but you were given something on loan." This does not diminish love, it clarifies it. To be alive is to borrow. To love is to borrow joy. To exist is to borrow time. Nothing was promised permanently, and yet, we are grateful while it lasts. This is the Stoic relationship with fate, not resentment, acceptance, and even more than acceptance, amor fati, love of fate. Not because fate is gentle, but because resistance is futile. You do not heal by wishing loss away. You heal by integrating it. Stoicism teaches that grief has a natural course. It should be expressed but not indulged endlessly, not turned into identity, not worshipped as proof of love. You honor the dead by living well, not by destroying yourself in their absence. Seneca warned that excessive mourning harms both the living and the memory of the dead. To suffer endlessly does not resurrect anyone, but to live meaningfully allows their influence to continue. Grief is love with nowhere to go. Stoicism gives it direction, into memory, into gratitude, into presence. Not denial, but transmutation. This is why Stoicism is often misunderstood as cold. It is not cold. It is precise. It knows that emotions left without guidance become tyrants and tyranny. Whether external or internal, destroys life. The Stoic does not rush grief, but he does not surrender to it either. He walks with it, one step at a time and gradually. Pain softens into remembrance. Loss becomes part of the story, not the end of it. This same wisdom applies to all endings. A career that collapses, a relationship that ends, a dream that dissolves. We grieve futures as much as people, often more. The Stoics remind us what hurts is not that the future vanished. It is that we mistook imagination for certainty. The future was never yours. Only this moment was and still is, even now, even in sorrow. This is where Stoicism offers something rare. Hope without illusion, meaning without fantasy. You do not need to believe everything happens for a reason. The Stoics did not. They believed things happen because nature unfolds. Your task is not to explain fate. Your task is to respond well. This restores dignity, even in pain, especially in pain, because when meaning cannot be found externally, it is created internally by how you bear what happens. The Stoics believed that dying well was inseparable from living well. To practice mortality daily was not to dwell on death, but to align life with what matters. When you remember death, trivialities fall away, petty arguments shrink, resentments lose power. What remains is simple. How will I live today? How will I treat others? How will I use the time that remains? This awareness does not darken life. It illuminates it. The Stoic does not fear death constantly. He befriends its reminder, and through that friendship, life becomes vivid, urgent in the right way, tender, honest, real. If you have listened this far, something inside you already knows the truth, not as an idea, as a quiet recognition. That much of your worry was never protecting you. That much of your fear was never preparing you. That much of your anxiety was simply noise mistaken for responsibility. The Stoics would not scold you for this. They would nod gently because they understood the human condition. They knew that to be human is to tremble at times, to doubt, to fear loss, to cling. Stoicism was never a philosophy for perfect people. It was a philosophy for frightened ones, for people trying to live decently inside uncertainty, for people who felt the weight of existence and still wanted to love life. This is why Stoicism endures. Not because it promises happiness, but because it teaches steadiness, and steadiness is rarer and more valuable than happiness. Happiness comes and goes. Steadiness remains. You will still feel sadness. You will still feel fear. you will still feel longing. Stoicism does not erase these. It teaches you not to drown in them, to let emotions pass through you without ruling you. Like weather moving across a landscape, the storm arrives, the storm leaves, the ground remains. That ground is your character, your judgments, your values, your choices. This is the part of life that no crisis can confiscate. Not illness, not loss, not aging, not death. This is why the Stoics believed true freedom was internal. You may be constrained externally, but no one can force you to abandon reason. No one can compel you to betray your conscience. No one can take your dignity without your cooperation. This is a radical idea. It means that even in the worst circumstances, something remains yours, a small flame, but enough, and from that flame, meaning can be rebuilt. The Stoics did not ask you to retreat from the world. They asked you to participate without losing yourself, to care but not cling, to love but not possess, to act but not demand outcomes. They asked you to live as a citizen of the world, but to remember that you are not separate from others. That cruelty can damages the whole, that kindness strengthens it. That every human being you encounter is struggling with something invisible, and therefore deserves patience, including you. Stoicism is often mistaken for hardness, but its deepest expression is gentleness. A gentleness born not of naivety, but of understanding. When you understand how fragile life is, you stop being careless with people. When you understand how short time is, you stop wasting it on resentment. When you understand how little you control, you stop punishing yourself for what was never yours to command. This is wisdom, quiet, unshowy, transformative. You do not need to overhaul your life overnight. The Stoics never demanded sudden perfection. They believed in practice, daily, imperfect, human practice, each day. You ask, what is within my control today? And you do that, you let go of the rest. Each day, you try to respond rather than react. Each day, you remember that life is finite, not to frighten yourself, but to awaken gratitude. Each day, you try to act with integrity, even when no one is watching. That is enough. That is a good life. Not impressive, not viral, but meaningful, and meaning sustains where pleasure cannot. The world will not become less chaotic. The news will not slow down. Loss will still arrive unannounced, and the Stoics never promised calm seas. They taught you how to build a sturdy vessel, one thought at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of clarity at a time. You do not need to be fearless, you only need to be honest. You do not need to control life. You only need to meet it well, and when worry arises, as it will, you return to the basics. What is in my power, what is not? What does this moment ask of me? Often, the answer is simple: patience, kindness, restraint, courage, small virtues practiced daily. This is how a life is shaped, not by grand gestures, but by quiet consistency. And over time, something shifts. You worry less, not because danger disappears, but because trust appears. Trust in yourself. Trust that you can endure. Trust that you do not need certainty to live well. This is Stoic peace, not numbness, not withdrawal, but grounded presence. You are here. You are alive. You are enough for this moment, and this moment is enough. As we come to the end, take one slow breath, not to escape life, but to re-enter it. May you walk forward with a calmer mind. May you meet difficulty with dignity. May you remember what matters when noise grows loud. May your health be steady. May your luck be kind. May your heart find peace even when answers are unclear. May happiness visit you often, and may wisdom stay with you always. If this reflection brought you clarity, comfort, or quiet strength, carry it with you into your day. And if you wish to continue this path, to practice calm, courage, and clarity in a chaotic world, stay close, because this is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of living well. Be well, be steady, and may your days be gentle.